America has been targeted for over 100 years by sophisticated subversion. Our enemy is a diabolic axis that includes Russia and China, who lead the international communist movement, and their crew of rogue Marxist regimes in countries like Venezuela and Cuba, as well as the globalist successors of the Fabian socialist movement, using Islamic jihadis as their shock troops. Over the generations, this subversion was so effective that now a double-digit percentage of the U.S. native population are useful idiots who don't even realize that they're assisting communist revolutionaries overthrowing the Constitution. Enemy political warfare operations ramped up considerably after the election of Barack Obama, and it became an existential crisis in 2020 when communist revolutionaries overthrew our government by employing every type of election fraud, obvious and crude, subtle and sophisticated, on a massive scale. And they stole the 2020 election. Corrupt and traitorous media personalities, politicians, and government operatives all aided the 2020 steal with destabilizing mass line narratives like the COVID response and other classic Maoist, unrestricted, and political warfare tactics. They all need to be brought to justice, but Attorney General Pam Bondi and FBI Director Kash Patel are too busy making their appearances on Fox News and Joe Rogan, making promises they have absolutely no intentions of keeping. And as we've learned in the last 24 hours, maybe even flat out telling lies. Perhaps. The communists also employed foreign technology, which comprised a considerable portion of the technical backbone of the U.S. election infrastructure, and disproportionality so in battleground states. This technology has been investigated and revealed to be under the control of hostile foreign nations who specifically designed and utilized this technology to change vote counts in both the U.S. and foreign elections. Intelligence operatives, computer engineers, and cybersecurity professionals have researched and analyzed the integrity of these systems and have found not only uncorrected exploitable security vulnerabilities, which Tulsi Gabbard hinted to at a cabinet meeting not so long ago and was noticeably not present today, but features purposefully designed into the technology to permit vote counts to be fraudulently altered in real time. To assist this investigation, over 12 foreign computer engineers who developed these fraudulent systems were recruited, relocated internationally for their protection, and employed to reveal the technical details of the mechanisms of fraud which they designed. This investigation also uncovered hard evidence of compromised political and international control of the companies which developed these systems. The totality of these assessments proved motive, capability, intent, and opportunity for these systems to be deliberately designed for large-scale election fraud. The evidence proves that the 2020 election was stolen using this technology. It also proves that this foreign technology was in place to steal the 2024 election. However, to the surprise of our enemies, this research gave patriots the ability to disrupt the election fraud technology and prevent the theft of President Trump's 2024 victory. Otherwise, we would not be having this conversation we're having right now, but rather we would be reeling from the crushing tyranny raining down from an illegitimate President Kamala Harris, run by Obama and his foreign handlers. The DNI, the DOJ, the FBI, I can tell you, have all been briefed in detail on the election fraud crimes, given evidence of the technical details, samples of the technology, and access to over 12 whistleblower engineers who helped to develop the technology. These key witnesses have been waiting for months to to see someone act on their information. I can also share that private funds are still being used for their personal security. No serious investigation has yet to be really spun up. There are some beginnings, it looks like, of investigation, but time is of the essence. We learned today of a task force that has been created by the DNI, Tulsi Gabbard, who seems to be the only person perhaps in the administration outside of President Donald Trump taking this information very seriously. Months ago, there should have been 2,000 FBI special agents executing search warrants for equipment, ballots, and other evidence in battleground states. After all, the Biden regime's DOJ had no problem quickly mustering more than 1,000 FBI special agents to arrest grandmothers for random, unimportant J6 violations. In 2020 and in 2024, if it wasn't disrupted first, foreign and domestic enemies of the Constitution overthrew and would have once again overthrown the U.S. government. This isn't just egregious criminal activities. They are acts of war. We cannot imagine a more serious national security crisis. Yet Pam Bondi and Kash Patel have not put the gears of justice in motion, let alone grease them. My question to you, Bondi and Kash Patel, what are you waiting for? What? Especially you, Pam Bondi. We know President Trump takes this seriously. In his August 2024 interview with Sean Ryan, President Trump articulated the infamy of the 2020 election by using these three specific adjectives. He said the 2020 election was stolen. It was a coup, and Harris and Walz are communist. President Trump put you in place to carry out his agenda on which the American people elected him. Do something. Your commander's intent is clear. Justice delayed is justice denied. But more importantly, all these communist revolutionaries are still conducting revolutionary operations. And it gets worse by the day. The communist color revolution that recently spread across Los Angeles and elsewhere over the pretense of outrage that President Trump would dare enforce federal immigration law is the least of our problems if you cannot arrest and prosecute traitors when the investigation and evidence is handed over to you on a silver platter. Prosecution would also disrupt the domestic leadership of the revolutionaries currently conducting hostile operations. There's currently no one in the orbit of President Donald Trump who understands the Maoist political warfare being waged against America, nor how the intelligence community has been completely corrupted and transformed into a hostile enemy campaign. That, my friends, must change. This is much more than dirty criminal politics. This is a national security crisis. Hostile nuclear powers are engaging in world war against the West, leading with a panoply of other than kinetic tactics. But the final mop-up, if not corrected, will be a nuclear war. America needs serious people who know the identity, tactics, doctrines, and objectives of our enemies, or we will perish, both as a nation and as a free people. And that's the absolute truth.
The last time President Trump was in office, gold soared 50% and silver went up a huge 53%. Americans who invested in silver and gold during Donald Trump's first presidency are very happy that they did it. And right now, gold continues to soar to the highest numbers in history. These gains are just an appetizer for what's to come. Some market analysis are saying that gold is predicted to rise another 30% in the next year alone. So now's the time to invest in gold and silver, and that's why I partnered with Fisher Liberty Gold. Fisher Liberty Gold is a conservative-owned and operated precious metals investment company. They even helped my good friend President Trump get elected through their contributions to Turning Point USA and other conservative groups. I have dedicated my life to ensuring that people get the best sleep ever. And in addition to owning a MyPillow, I can now sleep well at night knowing that you can all protect your savings with precious metals with Fisher Liberty Gold. With Fisher Liberty Gold, you can sleep well knowing that your retirement is secure. And if you call now, you're going to receive your very own presidential gold guide and qualify for up to $20,000 in free silver. But wait, there's more. Call now or text metals to 26786 to receive your presidential gold guide from Fisher Liberty. And for a limited time, I will send you a free MyPillow for qualified accounts. This presidential gold guide from Fisher Liberty will tell you exactly why you need to own gold even while Donald Trump is president. And just by calling in, you get a free MyPillow for a limited time for qualified accounts and up to $20,000 in free silver. So don't wait. Call 1-888-4GOLD-19 or text metals to 26786 today. That's 1-888-4GOLD-19 or text metals to 26786 today to receive your free MyPillow and up to $20,000 in free silver.
Sure.
Your memo and release yesterday on Jeffrey Epstein, it left some lingering mysteries. One of the biggest ones is whether he ever worked for a American or foreign intelligence agency. The former labor secretary, who was Miami U.S. Attorney Alex Acosta, he allegedly said that he did work for an intelligence agency. So could you resolve whether or not he did? And also, could you say why there was a minute missing from the jailhouse tape on the night of his death?
Yeah, sure. Could I just interrupt? Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? This guy's been talked about for years. You're asking, we have Texas, we have this, we have all of the things. And are people still talking about this guy, this creep? That is unbelievable. Do you want to waste the time, and do you feel like answering?
I don't mind answering.
I mean, I can't believe you're asking a question on Epstein at a time like this, where we're having some of the greatest success and also tragedy with what happened in Texas. It just seems like a desecration, but you go ahead.
Sure. First, to back up on that, in February, I did an interview on Fox, and it's been getting a lot of attention because I said, I was asked a question about the client list, and my response was, it's sitting on my desk to be reviewed, meaning the file along with the JFK, MLK files as well. That's what I meant by that. Also, to the tens of thousands of video, they turned out to be child porn downloaded by that disgusting Jeffrey Epstein. Child porn is what they were. Never going to be released, never going to see the light of day. To him being an agent, I have no knowledge about that. We can get back to you on that. And the minute missing from the video, we released the video showing definitively the video was not conclusive, but the evidence prior to it was showing he committed suicide. And what was on that, there was a minute that was off the counter. And what we learned from Bureau of Prisons was every night, they redo that video. It's old, from like 1999. So every night the video is reset, and every night should have the same minute missing. So we're looking for that video to release that as well, showing that a minute is missing every night. And that's it on Epstein.
Mr. President, on the tariffs.
Kash Patel, Dan Bongino, and Pam Bondi have destroyed their own credibility with their handling of the Epstein pedophile files and have permanently, I would say, damaged the moral credibility of the Trump administration with the American public. The Epstein files have been disappeared by the Trump administration because Epstein was a honeypot operation for Israel with help from the CIA and that MI6. That means, okay, our intelligence services have blackmail on our politicians and elites. That's why we live in a banana republic. For more on that, let's go to the White House now with our White House correspondent, Kara Castronova, who's standing by. Boy, that cabinet meeting has caused a flurry of activity in MAGA social media. What more can you tell us about it, Kara?
Well, first, kudos to the journalist from the New York Post, Steve Nelson. I just spoke to him a short while ago for asking that question because a lot of people would be afraid to ask such a question, especially at a cabinet meeting. But that is the obvious viral clip that came out of the whole thing. People want to know, obviously, what's going on with the Epstein files, whether you're a Democrat or a Republican is important. And the Gateway Pundit has reported extensively. And I love reading comments because then I could really understand what the public is thinking. And nobody is happy, obviously. I'm reading the comments on X, reading the comments on these Gateway Pundit articles that were written, and people are just obviously frustrated. It's not old news that people don't like Pam Bondi and MAGA or the job that Kash Patel and Dan Bongino were doing. But I think what really surprised people, and there's that article that if you could pull that one up next where it says, whoa, President Trump's reaction was a little bit interesting. I think what was most surprising was the president's reaction to that question by Steve from the New York Post. He sort of almost didn't want Pam to answer it. She did, though. And I think her answer was probably get more questions will be asked of because of her answer. It was an interesting answer, to say the least. She mentioned that a minute is cut off every single night at midnight, which I just don't understand. Like, a lot of people are trying to understand how a minute could be cut off from these jailhouse videos every night. So I think that this is just going to open the door for more questions, obviously, from Pam Bondi and the Trump administration. And again, MAGA is absolutely infuriated right now and not happy. And if you read comments on all of these articles, you have diehard Trump supporters who follow the Gateway Pundit who are just saying, you know, this is completely unacceptable. Emerald.
Yeah, I too give kudos to Steve Nelson for asking the question, and he's a mainstream reporter, but he is one of those who has over the years asked some of the questions that are important to the Trump base and just good questions in general. So we want to give credit where credit's due. Look, getting back to that footage, we were told several years ago that the cameras have malfunctioned. We keep getting different stories, so that's why people are not accepting the answers. They want to know why we're asking these questions. The Trump supporters want to know these questions. That's who I'm seeing on social media in the large part saying we're not accepting these answers. Okay, so we've been told in the past that the malfunction happened with the footage. Now there's this footage. Now we're told it's missing a minute because of this. There's also other questions about the footage, and I know other people are breaking it down and dissecting it better than I could right now. And we'll try to get to that in the coming days. But there's also Pam Bondi qualified her answer to Fox News in the past about it sitting on her desk. We have that soundbite. Let's see if what she said today actually matches up with what she said then, and if her explanation holds water. Take a listen.
DOJ may be releasing the list of Jeffrey Epstein's clients. Will that really happen?
It's sitting on my desk right now to review. That's been a directive by President Trump. I'm reviewing that. I'm reviewing JFK files, MLK files. That's all in the process of being reviewed because that was done at the directive of the president from all of these agencies.
So have you seen anything that you said, oh my gosh?
And then she backtracked, as you know today, Emerald. Right. She backtracked on that and said it wasn't the list I was talking about. It was the file, and it just, like I said, it opens the door for more questions, more frustration. And it just doesn't look like there's transparency or honesty there, unfortunately, with this particular subject for the Trump administration. And, definitely that clip is controversial and it is contradictory to what she said today.
The problem is, too, I just want to say there is a lot of good things going on in the Trump administration. Okay. The border is getting under control. Maybe the deportations aren't where they really want them to be, but they're going. They're winning on the tariff messaging and the tariff war. This just feels like it's a misstep and it's overshadowing a lot of the good that is coming out from the Trump administration. And a lot of us because we were promised by these people that we would get answers, transparency, and with the contradictory statements they themselves have made, it's the president's most ardent supporters that are still asking questions. So we're going to continue to ask questions. Kara Castronova, thanks for being there and being there to ask questions for us. We'll keep diving into this, and I don't think whether they want it to be the last of it or not. This is not the last of talking about Jeffrey Epstein. Kara Castronova, thank you so much.
Thank you, Emerald. Have a great day.
Whether it's being a weekend warrior or spending time with your family, feeling your best is the key to doing the things you love. That's why I'm excited to tell you about Nirvanta. It's a natural solution designed to help you stay active and live well naturally. Nirvanta is a topical blend of all natural essential oils like frankincense, myrrh, and a proprietary gold standard plant stock extract. It's perfect for your hands, feet, knees, back, or anywhere else that needs a little extra care. Use Nirvanta proactively as part of your daily maintenance routine, and you're guaranteed you're going to feel the difference. Simply massage Nirvanta in for at least 60 seconds, 2 to 3 times a day to get the best results. And if you're not completely satisfied, you get your money back. No questions asked. There's simply no risk and no reason not to try Nirvanta today. Right now, you get 15% off with code Lindell exclusively at nirvantahealth.com. So stop reaching out for that medicine cabinet. Get Nirvanta instead and experience the difference. Go to nirvantahealth.com. Use code Lindell to get 15% off today. Nirvanta Health. Live well naturally.
Where is Tulsi Gabbard? It appeared that the Director of National Intelligence was noticeably missing from today's cabinet meeting. She's been a prominent figure in cabinet meetings past. So it begs the question, is the Trump administration Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, on her way out? Now, many reports indicate that she is, at the very least, on thin ice in that role. These rumors come on the heels after Gabbard disagreed with President Donald Trump on intelligence related to Iran's nuclear weapons program, and after she announced her office was taking over the presidential daily brief from the CIA. Gabbard has created a new group comprised of intelligence professionals known as the Directors Intelligence Group, or DIG, to basically check the work of America's elephantine intelligence professionals. Now, according to Just the News, they're reporting that, quote, among the top priorities for the panel will be the Russia collusion hoax, the Hunter Biden laptop, and election vulnerabilities in 2020 and 2022. The Biden administration is labeling of political opponents as terrorists and a host of others. So we just can't imagine why Tulsi Gabbard might be on everyone's crap list within the administrative steady state this year. And joining us now is our in-house geopolitical analyst and senior national security editor at the National Interest, Brandon J. Weichert, who wrote that article asking if Tulsi is on her way out. Look, Brandon, within DC circles and geopolitical circles, people who focus on intelligence, this is not this question is being asked. There's lots of chatter about Tulsi not being in favor. Not only has she perhaps fallen out of favor with the president, but she had a target on her back from the intelligence community from day one who will take advantage perhaps of this slight rift between her and the president if one is present. Because of, look at the list, and I have confirmed that this task force, is in existence. It is confirmed. And more, I've confirmed even more of what they're looking into. And I can tell you what she has tasked some of the professionals at the ODNI to look into. The 3-letter agencies certainly don't want that. Tell us what you're hearing.
That's exactly what I'm hearing. Again, I don't know the details beyond what was listed in that Just the News segment. The Russia collusion hoax and things like that are absolutely verboten to discuss in the professional intelligence community. So for her to be coming on as the head of the entire 17 agency intelligence community, ordering her people to start digging into those stories alone, this is controversial. And you're right, any kind of rift or perceived rift between President Trump, who is really her only lifeline in that role because she's so hated by the intelligence bureaucracy and by many people on the Hill, many of whom she served alongside as a congresswoman. She is really kind of on her own on an island. She needs the president to have total backing of her moves. And ever since the Iran war, there is daylight between the two of them that the intelligence community absolutely will exploit because they want to get rid of her. And one thing in the report, Philip Wegman talked about this and his report on the matter last week at the Real Clear Politics website. Apparently, Tom Cotton has introduced legislation in the Senate Intelligence Committee that would essentially cap Tulsi Gabbard's staff to about 650 people, and it would send more than half of the functions of the ODNI, her office, it would return those functions to CIA. So this is all sort of, in my opinion, retaliation, Emerald, for her initial move to move the presidential daily brief out of CIA's domain and into her domain.
Can I just share with you? So I just confirmed with the print pooler for the day, Steve Nelson of the New York Post, who asked a very important question that we're going to get to later in that cabinet meeting. If Tulsi did ever present in the room, he said no, she was not, and neither was RFK Jr., which is also notable. I haven't looked at his travel list or seen what he's doing today, but these are the two kind of Maha coalition appointments that are all of a sudden no longer present in the room.
Yeah. And we know, Emerald, that even during the night of the strike, when Trump had the Situation Room in the White House full of his advisors for the B-2 bombing strikes on Iran, initially we were told Tulsi wasn't there. Of course, then a picture came out showing her that she was there, but she was not part of the group sitting at the table. She was sort of on the end of the table on her own, and her body language was very much not that of somebody who really wanted to be there. It was sort of a hostage video type situation where she was clearly there because she had to be, and she did not want to be there and she didn't agree. So there is tension between Trump and Tulsi Gabbard. The Republicans in Congress are trying to basically gut her office. It's not a great office to begin with. It's a redundant office, but the fact of the matter is Republicans and Democrats never had a problem with the ODNI until Tulsi became the head of it. And she started investigating these real intelligence failures and, conspiracies to commit crime, such as the Hunter Biden stuff. So I think this is very evident that she's on the outs. She's not the only one though, either. The MAGA type that's on the outs. And that's the real sad thing.
Notably, this effort against her, I noticed from the circles I talk with, really ramped up after her comments in that one iconic cabinet meeting in which she stated in front of those pool cameras where all these networks, okay, MSNBC, probably CNN, I didn't have my feed going at the time, but where all of these networks play that cabinet meeting and the director of national intelligence tells the world she has been briefed and seen that there is evidence of vulnerabilities in the voting machines that they can be hacked. Yeah. It really ramped up after that. So with saying that and knowing now that she has this task force that in part between the politicization of all these other investigations they're supposed to be looking into and some of the Biden, era wrongs, is looking into 2020 and 2022 potential election fraud. It even goes beyond that. And that's all I can say. But real keen scrutiny on that. how important is it for Donald Trump to step up and protect her?
I think the fact that there's any question at all that he doesn't have her back is really wrong here. He should have had her back from the beginning. She's the only one really that can protect him from the deep state. A similar role was played by Mike Flynn for like a hot minute in the first term, and then of course Trump was duped into firing Flynn by the deep state, and we know from that moment on, the deep state was able to basically get their hooks into Trump and attack him relentlessly. Now it looks like they're not going to necessarily in the deep state try to do the attacks directly like they did in the first term. They're going to try to get Tulsi out. They'll try to get my buddy Bridge Colby out at the Pentagon. They'll try to get maybe RFK out, and then they're going to basically co-opt Trump and push him into doing what they want. And we're already seeing this with the Epstein files. Trump is clearly going along with this, and he doesn't care about the truth anymore. So if Tulsi goes, and I suspect she is on the outs, I think she will go, whether it's now or 6 months from now, I think she's going to be out. The fact of the matter is that Trump will be co-opted by the same swamp that wants to destroy him and his MAGA movement.
She will be out if Trump doesn't get this message and adjust course. Let's talk about Elbridge Colby a little bit. That's the other, seen as MAGA world figure that is under fire internally and from the deep state. And that's probably because last week, the Undersecretary of Defense for Policy, that's his official title, Colby put the kibosh on sending weapons to Ukraine based on the fact that America's arsenal, he says, is running dangerously low.
Yes.
But all of a sudden, after Netanyahu showed up in D.C., lo and behold, last night, what we heard at that dinner with Netanyahu and Trump said, and I don't have the soundbite right on hand at the moment, he said that he would be sending more weapons to Ukraine. He reiterated that in the cabinet meeting today, but he said it's for defense. But if Elbridge Colby put a kibosh on that last week, and now Trump is saying this is what he's going to do, it might not bode well for Mr. Colby.
Yeah, what that basically does is just like with Tulsi, it signals to the neoconservative kind of globalist establishment element running DC that there's daylight between Trump and this very MAGA figure, Bridge Colby, and they're going to try to exploit that. He's already been under attack from day one by the neoconservative element because he wants to like a laser focus on standing up to China in the Indo-Pacific. He doesn't believe we can do all these other issues like fighting in the Middle East, fighting in Ukraine. He thinks we need to focus entirely on Indo-Pacific, and that gets him a lot of enemies, notably from the neoconservative element, which is obsessed with the Middle East and Ukraine. And so Elbridge has had from day one a target on his back. He finds himself isolated. He's in a strong position because of his rank, so he's able to still get things done. But ultimately, if POTUS is going to override him, that's going to weaken his position. It's also going to signal to Secretary of Defense Hegseth that Bridge is on the outs with the big boss, and Hegseth will act accordingly, which means that one of the few remaining America firsters in the Pentagon, remember Dan Caldwell and those other guys were pushed out months ago. They were replaced by neocons. So one of the few remaining non-neocon leaders might be on the outs because this is really going to hurt him with his ability to get things done if the president doesn't have his back. It's just like with Tulsi.
We actually do have that soundbite of Trump calling for more weapons. Let's take a listen to that.
Are you planning to send more weapons to Ukraine?
We're going to send some more weapons. We have to. They have to be able to defend themselves. They're getting hit very hard now. They're getting hit very hard. We're going to have to send more weapons. Yeah, defensive weapons primarily, but they're getting hit very, very hard.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a big blow to Bridge. That's a big and by the way, sorry.
You said Hegseth will act accordingly. Is that because, and I don't quite understand this, okay, and the general audience would probably not know this, but there's a lot of the influential neocons and definitely the pro-Israel faction who are expressing a lot of dissatisfaction with Secretary Hegseth. And that surprises me because I don't completely understand why. And I asked that question, why? Because it seems to me he's pretty in line with the policy you all desire. So why is it? Why is perhaps Hegseth facing criticism and potential, maybe departure himself at some point?
Well, Hegseth is on his way out too. My sources have again said, and I know our friend Gabby Cuccia has also confirmed this from her sources, that everything we've heard is he's out by the fall. But ultimately, the reason that the neoconservative element is very displeased with him is simply because he's not one of them fully. He's a Fox News host. He didn't cut his teeth in the policy realm. He didn't come up in the ranks the way they did. He doesn't have the connections that they do with all the sort of neoconservative think tank elements. He's not part of the club. He wants to be part of the club. He agrees with them on the neoconservative worldview as it relates notably to the Middle East and to Russia, but ultimately he's not part of the team. They want somebody like Tom Cotton, who is actually one of them in terms of having come up in the same realm and understanding the policy dynamics and understanding who to hire and who not to hire. One of the biggest problems Hegseth has faced is he didn't hire all their people. He hired some America Firsters, and they didn't like that. And there's been this war behind the scenes in the Pentagon since Trump's inauguration to get those handful of America Firsters like Dan Caldwell, like even Bridge Colby, to get them out so that they can be replaced by a more fully neoconservative element. And they just don't like Pete the way that they like, say, Tom Cotton.
And you just brought it back full circle for me, because I was going to ask you before we wrapped up, what does it say about Senator Tom Cotton that he would actually introduce legislation to give more power to the CIA?
Well, they sort of do out themselves at the end of the day, don't they? I mean, we see this with the Epstein thing. Kash Patel made it clear in his Rogan interview that CIA has all the information. He's never changed that story. Here again, Tom Cotton is making it clear who he's really in support of, and that's CIA, with giving all that power back to CIA from the DNI because Gabbard is too much of a wild card. So here we have the resurgence of the CIA, and we know that John Ratcliffe, CIA director, in that clip that they were talking about arming Ukraine with President Trump, Ratcliffe is like giggling almost. He's so happy because it's happening. Ratcliffe, by the way, is also the guy, CIA director, who bypassed the entire intelligence community, Emerald, and handed over that Israeli intelligence saying that Iran was going to get a nuke in like a few days, which is what triggered the war in the first place back in June. Ultimately, that intelligence, I have confirmed, is not actual intelligence. It came from a predictive modeling program built by Palantir at the IAEA. It's called Mosaic. So it wasn't even actionable intel. It was a computer model. So that is who Tom Cotton is working for right now. He's serving CIA and establishment DC, and they're pushing Hegseth, they're pushing Tulsi, and they're probably going to, unfortunately, push Bridge out at some point.
Unless, because I don't want to leave it sounding like a completely hopeless situation.
Sure.
Trump realizes who has his best interest at heart and the best interest of the American people. And I do truly believe that Tulsi Gabbard does. I know what she's working on, some of the things she's working on behind the scenes. And it does, especially as we look to the midterms. It behooves President Donald Trump to protect her, let her do her job. And then I hope he understands that should the midterms not go the right way, no matter what he does, he can hand them everything they want on a silver platter. They're still gunning for him. There will still be a major impeachment effort. When he is out of office, there will still be criminal indictments, just like there were these past 4 years. So I hope he understands. And we just laid out, I think, I wanted to lay out for the audience why it's so important and what is going on behind the scenes, because the public needs to know and apply public pressure.
Their goal is to demoralize and then defeat. Demoralize, disrupt, and defeat MAGA. That's their goal. Yeah. And
don't feel that way. Don't feel that way. I understand why some people may feel that way today. It might be hard not to, but don't feel that way. There's still a lot of good things happening, and there's still some course correction that could occur. Thank you so much, Brandon Weichert. Thank you so much for helping me lay this out. I appreciate you, and we'll talk to you again soon.
All right. See you soon. Bye-bye.
Friends, we all know the truth. Big Pharma and the federal bureaucracy have made a mess of healthcare in this country, and boy, that's an understatement. President Trump signed an executive order to bring prices down, and that's a great step. But we know that real change takes time. There's one pharmacy that is already stepping up. I want to tell you about All Family Pharmacy. They're not waiting. They're taking action now with a summer sale that gives you the power to take control of your health. Right now, through the end of June, you get 20% off site-wide, no insurance required. Did you hear that? 20% off, site-wide, no insurance required. They work with licensed doctors in all 50 states, and they ship fast, straight to your door. Whether it's ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, methylene blue, antibiotics, emergency kits, or your daily prescriptions, this is a time to stock up. If you believe in medical freedom, if you're tired of waiting for someone else to fix things, do what I do. Take action. Go to allfamilypharmacy.com/Lindell and use promo code Lindell20, Lindell 20 for 20% off your entire order. That's allfamilypharmacy.com, Lindell. Promo code Lindell20. Let's protect our families, defend our freedom, and make America healthy again together.
Are the tariff letters that you sent today final offers, or are they negotiable?
More or less final offer.
So South Korea, Japan should take it or leave
We're
it?
always subject to negotiate something that's fair, but we've talked to most of the countries, and pretty much they've had their way for many, many decades, as you know. And it was time that we just wanted fairness. This is not really equitable from our standpoint because it's just a small token by comparison to the damage that's been done over the years. But we had no other president that was willing to do this. I did it in my first term with China and others. We took in hundreds of billions of dollars of tariffs. No inflation, the most successful period of time that we've ever had financially in the country. The first term. I think this term is going to be much better, even much better than that. That was the best ever, and this is going to be, I think, substantially better. And we're on the way to doing that. We've already taken in over $100 billion worth of tariffs, and we haven't even started.
It seems like the trade war, which many have said was not really on, is very much back on. Trump issued stern letters this week to the leaders of traditional allies like Japan and South Korea, demanding they renegotiate or face stiff tariffs on their products coming into the United States. According to the Financial Times, a mouthpiece of the neoliberal globalist free trade community, the markets just don't think Trump is serious about his tariff threats. Now, our next guest argues they should be. Previously, Trump threatened 24% tariffs on Japan and South Korea. They're getting 25%. And that just might be the start. Is this sustainable? Will it bring in the kind of revenue that Trump's team seems to think? We're joined by Spencer Morrison. He is the author of the book, Reshore. Tariffs will bring our jobs home and revive the American dream. He's going to help us navigate the latest moves in Trump's trade war. And in fact, that was probably the largest focus of Trump's cabinet meeting we've been sitting and watching at the start of the show. Spencer, Trump is saying that they're already bringing in loads of money and that we'll be bringing in more money on August 1st. He's sticking to the tariffs, right?
I think he's sticking to the tariffs. You have to remember, this president has been, even before he ever got into politics, back in the 1980s when he was on Oprah, he was talking about tariffs and how America was getting ripped off on trade. So I think he's serious about it. The question is whether or not he's going to give more time to negotiate. Everybody knows President Trump loves to negotiate. The tariff deadline has already been extended. I think this is sort of the second extension of it. Some countries have come to the table, though. You got to remember, there's been a deal with the United Kingdom. There's been a deal with Vietnam that was just signed. There's an interim deal with China, which is also coming due in August. So we'll see ultimately what unfolds with these negotiations. One thing I'd like to point out, though, and I think it's really important to remember, none of the deals that have been negotiated so far or that are apparently in the works are free trade agreements. All of them asymmetrically skew the tariffs in America's favor. So I think that's a really great thing that we're seeing coming out of these deals.
I mean, has that ever happened in a trade deal before, Spencer? Or at least it's been a while, right?
Yeah, a lot of these, all the free trade deals usually put, American producers on the back burner, and unfortunately prioritize foreign interests. So I think we're finally seeing some movement on that. I mean, this is a big about face. For example, with the Vietnam deal, Vietnam, there's a 0% tariffs on American goods entering Vietnam, 20% tariff on goods coming into America. And the most important part about that deal is that any goods that are shipped through Vietnam, so for example, goods that are coming in maybe from China or Cambodia, they're subject to an additional tariff, an additional 20%. So I think the Trump administration is live not only to the issues of this asymmetrical trade, but also they're live to the issue that a lot of countries are sort of routing their imports through like shell countries, basically. China famously used to do this through Hong Kong. That's been worked out, but I think it's a good sign that the administration is live to this issue.
His Secretary of the Treasury, Scott Bessent, was, of course, present in that cabinet meeting, and he had this to say about the Trump tariffs. Let's listen.
Yes, sir. We will have taken in about $100 billion in tariff income thus far this year, and that's with the tariffs, the major tariffs not having started till the second quarter. So we could expect that could be well over $300 billion by the end of the year. We don't agree with CBO scoring, but for those who do, the CBO scored tariff income over the next 10 years at $2.8 trillion, which we think is probably low.
Bessent's actually being floated as potentially a replacement for Jerome Powell should he resign. So he's on board with the Trump tariffs, saying that one of the discussions there in the cabinet room was that these tariffs could overcome the deficit. Of course, Bessent saying we don't trust CBO scoring, and we don't, and that they think the revenue is going to be even greater.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I'd love to see the tariff revenue go down to $0. And the reason I say that is because I want to see American industry boom and develop to the point that the country is self-sufficient and no longer needs to import all of these goods, right? So you got to remember, there's 2 points to a tariff, and this goes all the way back to Alexander Hamilton's report on manufacturers. Tariffs have a dual purpose. The first purpose is revenue generation. They're a tax, right? Everybody knows that. That's why the Tariff Act of 1789 was put into effect. It was to raise money for the new colonial government. The second purpose of tariffs, though, and this is a more important, broad purpose, is to protect American industry from asymmetrical foreign competition. This is the American system. This is the system that America prospered under for over 150 years. And ultimately, what I think we'd love to see is to reshore all of those factories from places like China and Mexico, reshore the IT industry from India, and bring those jobs and all of that wealth and capital back to America. So, there's projections of, these high tariff revenues. I'd love to see projections of very low tariff revenues, because that means reshoring is working.
I want to ask you, let's bring BRICS more into the conversation. Does his harder stance on BRICS, so he's threatening any nation that does business with BRICS with an additional 10% of tariffs, does that aid in the effort of reshoring?
Yeah, I think there's, President Trump is also using these as a political tool. People have to understand that the global trade regime has shifted dramatically in the last 20 years as China's come out onto the stage as the world's largest exporter. A lot of countries, in fact, most in the world are now, their primary trading partner is China rather than America. So I think the president is live to that issue. And he'd like countries to do business with America more so than China. But I think ultimately what we need to do is rebuild and reindustrialize America. That's the first order of business, because if America is producing high quality, economical goods, people are going to want to buy them no matter what, right? So the focus has to be on reshoring rather than using tariffs to generate tax revenue or as a political tool. The focus has to be on making America rich again.
Every now and then you'll hear the administration touch on the reshoring and the manufacturing issue. Not as much as they talk about the tariffs, though. You're very good at focusing the conversation back to the ultimate goal of tariffs. Do you think that the White House is messaging enough on the ultimate goal, the manufacturing reshoring? Because I would say, in my opinion, we might not hear that enough. And we heard it a lot with Peter Navarro in the first administration, right? He was brought out there a lot to talk specifically about doing that and how we would do that in executive orders. But I don't hear it as much. Wonder why that is.
Yeah, Peter Navarro is amazing. And, he endorsed my book, Reshore, so everybody should get a copy of
That's
Reshore.
right.
So Peter Navarro is great on that point, and he's excellent at bringing the message home. How does the economy actually affect the ordinary working class American? And I think the message, to some degree, is sort of being lost in the noise just because there's so much going on. Obviously, we're in the midst right now of what I hope is a monumental global trade shift. But of course, when that happens, everybody is focusing on the newsy parts of it, right? It's the conflict with China. It's the conflict with Canada. There's talk about all the money that's pouring into the government because there's all this talk of the debt and how we're going to pay that off. So I think those are really flashy and sort of sexy talking points. It's a lot less interesting, perhaps, to talk about what's going to happen. How many jobs we want to create, or building a new steel foundry. Does that get the same news traction? Probably not, but I think it should, because that's the stuff that's going to make the ordinary people be able to raise a family on a single income. That's what's going to rebuild our schools and our roads, right? So I think the focus needs to be redirected, and I'm doing my best to do this, to put it back on the American people and the American worker, because that's ultimately what all of this is for, right?
You know what? You sound a little bit like Trump there, in a more generous way about the media. You're right. The fact that we don't talk more about this is probably a product of the media, though, that pushes for more of the sensational story, which is the tariffs and the trade war. So I'm glad on this show we can focus it in back to where the ultimate destination is with this strategy, because I do believe this. I know this is the ultimate strategy that they're going for. It's just not maybe. I think it's sexy. I get excited about bringing back reshoring and bringing back American manufacturing. But then again, I am a coal miner's daughter, so maybe that's why. Spencer Morrison, is so good to see you. If you're interested in it too and you find it sexy, go out and get Spencer's book, Reshore. As he noted, it was endorsed by the great Peter Navarro, who provided a blurb for the book. It's always great to see you, Spencer. Thanks for joining us on a day that President Trump made a lot of news related to tariffs. We appreciate you.
Thanks for having me on the program. God bless.
Well, after Trump confirmed in his July 3rd rally that Attorney General the Agriculture Secretary, Brooke Rollins, was the genius behind the push to exempt illegals working as farmhands from deportation. Looks like the real big ags, corporate ags, biggest ally is doing an about face to save face. But is it for real? Secretary Rollins said no amnesty in her remarks today as she addressed her national security farm plan. But in the background, it sounds like she's still very much pushing for an exemption for illegals to work on farms. So we will see how long this iteration sticks. Rollins is not a favorite amongst U.S. independent farmers I speak with. In the first Trump administration, Rollins also, I can tell you, fell into the category of what we labeled in the media as pro-amnesty Trump officials that supported a plan back in the summer of 2020 to introduce amnesty legislation ahead of the 2020 election. Now, in another story that didn't receive perhaps the attention it deserves, in full Marxist fashion, 11 far-left extremists were just charged in a major terror plot to kill ICE agents in Texas. According to authorities, they were caught with not only tactical gear, but also high-capacity magazines. They also had literature that was entitled Organizing for an Attack, and they had a full plan to execute federal agents. But let's be honest, probably half of them were FBI agents based on historical precedents like J6, the J6 Fedsurrection, and the Gretchen Whitmer kidnapping hoax. And in more bizarre news, according to the Washington Post, an imposter using artificial intelligence posed as the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, and contacted 3 foreign ministers, a U.S. governor, and a member of Congress. That's according to a State Department cable obtained by WAPO. The imposter contacted these people by sending them voice and text messages that mimicked Rubio's voice and writing style, used artificial intelligence-powered software, and according to a U.S. official and State Department cable that they did obtain, they didn't know who is behind the string of impersonation attempts, but they believe the culprit was probably attempting to manipulate powerful government officials with the goal of accessing or gaining information, important information or accounts, according to that cable. That's it for this 8 o'clock edition of The Absolute Truth. Remember to go to mypillow.com, use your promo code so we can continue to bring you the truth. Hope you have a great night, and I'll see you right back here tomorrow at noon on Lindell TV.